Can you still taste that first bite of a wax bottle or hear the bell jingle as you step through the door of your neighborhood candy store? There's a special magic to the memory of rich chocolate, fizzy sarsaparilla, and tiny paper bags filled with penny treats that made Thursdays after school something to count down to. Candy stores in the 1950s weren't just places to satisfy a sweet tooth, they were a portal to a world of possibility and delight. Wooden floors creaked under the shuffle of kids' shoes, glass jars lined the counters, each promising its own treasure. The friendly shopkeeper, always with a knowing smile, remembered your favorite licorice twist or how you'd save up for the biggest lollipop. Everything seemed so vibrant, the pastel wrappers, the swirl of peppermint in the air, the simple pleasure of weighing nickels in your hand. Do you remember saving your allowance for that special treat or sharing with friends on the walk home? As we journey back through these sugar-coated memories, you'll rediscover just how sweet the 50s really were and maybe recall a favorite flavor you thought you'd forgotten. Step back with me, if you will, to a gentler world, one where neighborhoods thrived on corner stores and a child's treasures cost but a handful of coins. The candy stores of the 1950s sat at a fascinating crossroads of American history. In the wake of World War II, the country was brimming with optimism, suburban streets echoed with laughter, and a new generation, the baby boomers, was growing up with more leisure, more choices, and a sense of possibility that was reflected in everything, especially in the humble candy shop. Candy stores were more than just a business. They were a fixture in every community, woven into the daily rhythm of life. Many were family-owned, often passed down through generations, or run by immigrants who brought their own special recipes and traditions, like hand-pulled taffy or old-fashioned fudge. The grandfathers and fathers behind the counter knew your name, sometimes even your birthday, creating an atmosphere as sweet as the goods they sold. One of the earliest magical moments for a child in the 1950s was receiving a crisp dollar bill or a jangling pocket of change on Saturday morning, the weekly pilgrimage to the candy store as sacred as any family ritual. This was a period when the very idea of children spending money was new, and the post-war economic boom put treats within reach of even modest families. It's worth noting that by 1950 there were over 30,000 independently owned candy stores across the US, each its own little universe. Often, these stores doubled as newsstands, soda fountains, or even small groceries, creating bustling centers of neighborhood life. They didn't just sell candy. They sold newspapers, trading cards, comic books, and sometimes even fresh-baked goods. Pause for a moment. Can you remember not just the taste of malted milk balls, but the sensation of flipping through the latest Superman while waiting for your change? Let's not forget, too, that the 1950s were a time before supermarkets took over. Shopping was segmented, and the candy store offered something the chains never could, a tactile connection. Behind glass jars and wooden counters, local store owners curated selections with pride. The candies themselves were part of a much older tradition, many with roots that stretched back to the 19th century. Think of peppermint sticks or lemon drops, candies whose recipes hadn't changed since the days of your grandparents. But the 1950s also ushered in a new age of innovation, thanks in part to advances in food chemistry and packaging during the war years. Suddenly, kids were introduced to wild new flavors, brighter colors, and fun shapes. Atomic fireballs, sugar daddies, and Necco wafers became playground legends. You might be surprised to know that many candy companies flourished despite sugar rationing in the early 1940s, and by the 50s, production was finally back in full swing. In fact, the end of rationing led to a nationwide explosion in candy sales. Some brands quadrupled their output within 2 years. Did you know that the makers of M&M's first created their candy-coated treat for soldiers to prevent chocolate from melting in the field? By the 1950s, that little snack had made its way into lunchboxes and after-school routines from coast to coast. Yet not every store was the same. Regional variation gave every community its own signature favorites: saltwater taffy in coastal towns, goo-goo clusters in the south, maple sugar candies in New England. In cities, shopfronts bustled with children from every background, each seeking comfort or celebration in a shared language of sweetness. Immigrant-owned candy shops sometimes introduced old-world treats from Italy, Germany, or Eastern Europe, like marzipan fruits or hand-rolled caramels. Imagine being a child, eyes wide, encountering an array of candies with names you could barely pronounce, and daring a friend to try something new. Candy stores played a part in American holidays too. Before the days when supermarkets carried aisle after aisle of seasonal goods, it was your neighborhood store, decorated with tissue paper garlands and shiny foil, that would stock up on candy hearts in February, chocolate eggs in spring, and orange and black wrapped chews for Halloween. Remember stretching out that loot on the living room floor after trick-or-treating, sorting it by type with your siblings and maybe striking a trade for your favorite? In many ways, the candy store was a reflection of post-war America, hopeful, expanding, diverse, and increasingly shaped by clever marketing. Candy companies began sponsoring children's radio and TV shows, and iconic mascots like the Tootsie Roll Owl or Bazooka Joe made their first appearances. But there's something deeper here than just clever advertising. Think about your own memories. Was there a special candy you only ever had on your birthday? Or a treat your grandparent promised if you helped with chores? The rituals and stories tied to these candy stores were as enduring as the candies themselves. Of course, the 1950s were about more than just coins and confections. The local candy shop was a rare space where children of all backgrounds could gather, learn the basics of money, courtesy, and decision-making, a kind of unofficial classroom, counting out pennies, politely waiting your turn, and braving the moment when you asked to try something new were life's early milestones, wrapped up in the sweet scent of caramel and chocolate. And yet, as the decade wore on, changes began to stir. The rise of the supermarket and the arrival of chain pharmacies would begin to challenge the very existence of the local candy store. But what shaped the golden age of these magical places, those creaking floors, sparkling jars, and the storekeeper's kind voice, would leave a legacy that supermarkets could never replace. What role did your neighborhood candy store play in your childhood? Did you have a favorite counter seat or a secret handshake with the shop owner? As we explore further, you'll discover not just how candy stores mirrored the innovations and optimism of their era, but how the very treats on display changed with the times. In our next segment, we'll take a closer look at the candies themselves, their surprising evolution, whimsical packaging, and the unforgettable concoctions that made the 1950s a truly golden age for anyone with a sweet tooth. But be warned, you might come across a long-lost favorite that sends you right back to that sunlit corner store, pocket change in hand. As we close the chapter on our journey through the candy stores of the 1950s, it's easy to realize these shops offered far more than a simple sugar fix. They were sanctuaries of youthful wonder, places that stitched together neighborhoods, seasons, and generations. Through dusty display windows and hand-painted signs, we revisited a time when joy was counted out in nickels and dimes, and every glass jar offered an invitation to sample a brighter, sweeter piece of the world. We remembered how the sights and scents of licorice, caramel, and bright red cinnamon pulled us from school books and errands into a realm of possibility, if only for a moment. The rise of new candy brands in the post-war years, the mosaic of regional specialties, the anticipation of holiday treats, and the trusting smile of the shopkeeper, each played its part in a tapestry woven deeply into our memories. It wasn't simply the candies themselves that filled our lives with color, it was the experiences shared with friends, siblings, or even just the kind words from a familiar face at the counter. The rituals of choosing, trading, and savoring those childhood confections created tiny moments of independence and community all at once. Even as supermarkets and national chains crept onto the scene, changing the landscape of American retail, the small, local candy store held on to something the big retailers never could, a sense of belonging and continuity. Each visit was a celebration and, at times, a well-earned reward, building stories we now savor as adults. Looking back, we see that the candy stores of the 50s were far more than the sum of their products. They were places where the ordinary became extraordinary. They taught us early lessons about handling money, making choices, and connecting with others, things that felt as sweet as any marshmallow twist or root beer barrel. In remembering these treasured haunts, we're reminded how quickly time moves and how deeply the little joys of the past enrich our lives today. Perhaps, too, we realize the value in creating similar moments for the next generations, however different the settings may be. Do you ever wonder what simple pleasures from today will inspire such warm nostalgia in the decades to come? Now, I'd love to hear your stories. What was your go-to candy in the 1950s? Did you have a favorite candy store or maybe a cherished memory of a treat shared with a sibling, friend, or parent? Please share your fondest candy store moments in the comments below. Your memories help keep the spirit of those special places alive for everyone watching. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you won't miss our next nostalgic journey. And consider sharing this video with a friend who might remember the rustle of a paper candy bag or the thrill of a Saturday visit to their local shop. Together we can preserve the sweet traditions and memories that shaped us, because while the candies may have changed and the stores themselves may be fewer, the happiness they brought us lingers like a bit of sugar on the tongue, reminding us that the purest joys in life often come in the smallest, most colorful packages.